I have not seen the latest podcast on affordable housing. It is with Eric Solomon, the director of housing of San Jose. Great guy. I mean, he just went through the stories of how they were able to solve and create so much housing supply in Philadelphia from a $500 million redevelopment that ended up probably attracting over $1 billion of investments. That is wild. Then he and his team went over and did it in Tulsa afterwards. And now he's in San Jose looking to solve for affordable housing in one of the most expensive cities in the entire United States, trying to build 62,000 units. That is definitely a story you want to listen to. So if you have not checked it out, go to youtube.com/at Kent_HG. It's right in the video section. So today, what I want to talk about was I'm I've been interviewing people for the past 3 years, and I always wish that, hey, I wish someone would just sit me down and explain some of these concepts and what happens in real estate. Because a lot of times people hear real estate, they just think about real estate agents, and they think that's what it requires to be in real estate. It's that you have to go get a license. That's not the case, but I know that my kids, they're going to get a home one day and they're going to buy a home. And I want them to be prepared for a listing presentation, right? So I went through the content on what they teach agents in the coursework about listing presentations. And I would think that it's a little outdated because I think there's better ways now to attract people into your life that either wants to sell their home or buy a home. So, I mean, let's just talk about it, right? So, if you're an agent, right, one of the most critical steps to getting a home sold is to get the listing first, which typically you have to have a listing presentation with the seller. And this is where the agent is supposed to convince the homeowners why they're the best choice to market their property. So it doesn't matter if you're being a real estate agent. I would love for you to just understand what, and if you're getting pitched, it's okay to understand there's a pitch happening, but understand what you might want to do as a seller, what kind of questions you might want to ask before you engage with a real estate agent. Okay. So let's first start at the very high level, right? What's a listing presentation? That is just a pitch to the owner about how you're going to price, how you're going to advertise the property, and because how you're going to sell their home, right? Why they pick you when real estate agents are dime a dozen, right? What's your background? What's your marketing strategy? How you're going to tackle any potential issues? Because all these factors matter. They need to know who your audience is. Why would people seek you out? These are all big questions that you have to ask. And I like to think about it as if you're explaining to a kid, right? I love common analogies because I'm learning how to master this information that I learn. And the only way to master it is by learning how to teach it. And if I can't teach it to my own kids who, let's say they're like a 10-year-old, right? To teach it to any kid as a 10-year-old, you got to find analogies that work. So if you have better analogies that you think are helpful to explain to your kids, I would please, 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 I would really welcome them. Leave them in the comments because I'm just trying to become a better dad. All right, so let's talk about it, right? If you're auditioning for a play, let's say you have, I mean, usually when you're auditioning, you only have about a couple minutes to show why you should become the star actor, right? Similar concept for a listening presentation. You have to help them understand why you're the star agent that they need to hire to sell their home or buy a home, right? And as an agent, what they're taught to do, and I love kind of teaching my kid what agents are taught to do, because then you can understand the psyche of what they're doing and why they prepared a certain way. Or at the very minimum, this is probably what you would expect at a bare minimum, right? Because before you walk into that homeowner's living room, that agent should have done some homework, right? They should have researched recent sales or comps. If you ever watch any of my old comparable sales videos, any of my old underwriting videos, I show exactly how to look for comps. You have to understand what the market trends are, right? What's happening in the market? What's happening on a dollar per square foot? In this market, what do they value? Do they value pools? Do they not value pools, right? What are Melrose tax happening here? All these things you have to understand what's happening. Because even if you just run through a quick walkthrough just to understand the home's conditions, you got to understand, hey, why is this property being listed for this price and why are you proposing that? And are you honest? Because guess what? you're gonna have to figure out what that home is worth. And typically, if you want the home to get sold, your number as an agent, the recommendation that you put forward might be lower than what the seller wants. And that's a tough conversation for you to have. All right. So it's almost, it really comes down to just showcasing your unique value. Right. And I like to think of about it as, hey, why are you the person that has the most expertise in this area, right? What audience do you have? Do you have great digital marketing strategies, right? Do you have a big, extensive buyer database that you can reach out to market your property so you can get more eyeballs on it, right? Or do you are you really good at staging homes, right? Staging homes means that you are furnishing the property instead of leaving the rooms completely empty, because typically what they think is that when you stage your home tends to sell for a higher price. All that stuff matters, but it's also additional selling costs. So you got to figure out what is it that you want. All right. I like to think of it as when it comes to staging, right? I love telling my kids this. This is how it does. If you went to a bake sale, right, and everybody was selling brownies, but there were a couple of brownies that had little powdered sugar on top, but with a little stencil, right? There's a little covering with a little decoration, so you make your brownies look better. They stand out. So guess what? All of a sudden, that brownie might appear visually to be tastier than a regular looking brownie just because of the presentation. And that's how I like to look at it. Whenever you go to a bakery and you see something that has a little extra glaze on it, it looks better. So why wouldn't you do that for your own home? It's one of the biggest investments. All right. So I like using that analogy. Hopefully that works for you when you explain to your kids. Then you want to ask the agent, right? Especially if, let's say, my kid is selling a home and they're got an agent coming in. You want to ask them what is their marketing plan, right? Whether just online listings, like I mean, anybody can just list it on now, right? I mean, you should definitely have professional photography done. I mean, I see some listings on MLS where it's like just terrible angles, terrible photos. It's like, why would you do that? Like, who still hires agents that would do that? That doesn't make any sense, right? How often you do open houses? Do you want to do open houses? What kind of virtual tours do you have? So you got to really talk about the who, the what, the where of your promotion approach so that the seller feels confident that their home is going to get enough eyeballs on it. Very, very important. Okay. Now, when it comes to the price, right? We talked a little bit earlier about what it is and how you can get into discussions with the seller. Sellers are often going to want a sky high price, but it's your job to set a realistic figure that's not going to scare off buyers. So, typically, what they teach you is to do a comparable market analysis, a CMA, that shows them the data or the homes that recently sold. And if you don't know how to comp, then if you overprice that probably can sit on there and become stale. And people going to think something's wrong with the home. And then now you're going to start be forced to lower your price after a while without enough action. It's not good. All right. All right. So let's keep going. Let's talk about what they talk in this course about overcoming seller objections, right? There's going to be questions as, hey, why can't we list higher? Or how are you going to handle those tough negotiations? In those situations, you have to learn how to overcome seller objections because, in my opinion, you should have been able to prevent these objections in the first place by showing how prepared you are, by showing how much thoughtfulness you have put into their home. But if you do get those objections, understand what's really behind those objections. Understand what's really bothering them. Because if someone's pitching to my daughter, I would expect her to be able to ask these tough questions and see what they do. Because I think it's very important that we only hang out with A players, not B, not C. Don't settle for less than the best, because that will make the quality of life so much better. All right. So let's keep going. Let's see what's on my notes here. The next one is to talk about like closing the presentation. Is the funniest thing. I just don't think it's like very relevant because they think it's like some magical close that happens. I mean, obviously, at the end of it, you should summarize your plan, right? Why? What is your rationale for the price? How are you going to market the property? And what they can expect from you in terms of communication. But the best way to know what communication looks like with them is if they're not super communicative with you before they even get the listing, guess what? They're probably going to be less responsive after they get the listing. So sometimes when you are looking for feedback, you're looking for someone to be on your side, be very responsive. That's important. I think that's the most important. It comes down to communication. Cool. Hey, I hope you had an amazing Sunday, everybody. We talked about listing presentations, but I really wanted to talk about it not from an angle of you creating a listing presentation, but more so understanding what's a bare minimum that you should expect from an agent. Because I just want to prepare my kids for the day they engage an agent. And I do not want them to ever lower their standards for anybody. It's not worth it. Don't lower your standards. Hang out with A players and good A players. They don't have to be like cutthroat people. They can be great, warm people, and they can be on top of their game. The reason I went through all this information is not because I'm not, look, there's not investment advice. There's not legal advice. I'm not an agent right now. I am not soliciting any investments on this call. I'm not giving any legal advice. I'm looking to just prepare my kids for the future. And that might involve them hiring an agent. So hopefully this helps you too. And again, if you found this helpful, I would really appreciate you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@Kent_HG. And please leave a comment with any analogies that you think could explain these concepts better. I'm just trying to become a better dad, and I need your help doing it. All right. Hope you all have an amazing Sunday. I'll see you all tomorrow for day 549. Have a good one, everybody.